Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, Outdoor Oklahoma. Hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd Craighead. Saugeye are no doubt one of the most popular game fish species in Oklahoma. But did you know that the saugeye is actually a hybrid cross between the walleye and the sauger? And since this almost never happens naturally in a lake, that means that every saugeye in Oklahoma got its start in one of our hatcheries. Now, in preparation for producing saugeye, each spring our fisheries folks have to collect the broodstock walleye from area lakes. And one of the most dependable places to do so is Canton Lake. Even artificial reproduction in a hatchery is somewhat dependent upon the weather. Last spring's slow start put our walleye collection a little behind schedule, but regardless, the show must go on.
Pull it up on the front of the boat, and you can see there's just a couple of males, and we'll probably just drop this net, take them out tomorrow. We usually leave them about 2 days if there's not very many. This year's been kind of an off year. Right now we're setting at a little over 6 million eggs. Usually we would have around 15 million. It's been unusually cold. It started out at 39 degrees. Usually it's 45 when we set the nets around March 8th or 9th. And so this year's been really slow. It's just threw the fish out of whack, and it's not a real good egg year. So we're still down here trying to get what we can get. This year, we're already into April, and we're gonna, it's gonna be a week and a half into April before we pull the nets. And we would be looking for white bass instead of still doing walleye and saugeye. But the white bass seem to be running late too because of water temperatures. But I think that'll change here before long because the water's jumping up so quick. I think it was 58 today. So the white bass ought to be doing it.
The advantage of a saugeye is in these older reservoirs, which are aging. The saugeye tolerates turbid, muddy water. They are a hybrid, so they're more aggressive. So they'll bite better than what regular walleye will do. A lot of walleye fisheries that had declined over the years were revitalized with the saugeye hybrid, which anglers can catch. Another reason for saugeye is they work on stunted crappie populations. You can get 2 bangs for your buck, is they will thin the crappie and get you bigger, nicer crappie, and you'll also wind up with trophy saugeye to fish for. Lake Carl Blackwell is a well-known saugeye lake. You can get on our website and find other good saugeyes lake like Altus. But the saugeye is an angler's dream because they're more aggressive and they're easier to catch, and they've revitalized a lot of fisheries.
Well, thanks to the relentless efforts of John Stahl and his crew, saugeye are a formidable sport fish all over Oklahoma. Not only do our guys know a thing or two about how to produce saugeye, they also know how to catch them as well. We're now headed down to Fort Cobb to join Larry Kofer and his crew on a much-deserved break to do what they call a little recreational sampling of walleye. To think I've always just called it fishing.
Are you coming?
I'm ready. You ready?
Let's roll.
You know where the fish are at?
Heck yeah.
Got some money on it?
Lunch? No money on it.
Lunch?
You boys think?
No. but I do have some idea about where to start. So
Let's go find them.
all right. Any money on who's going to get the biggest one?
We already know who that's going to be.
John?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do know. Not much, but maybe enough. One of the neat things about Fort Cobb is there's several good points, and they go way out in the lake. Not to where they're a problem or hazard for boating, but just good fishing points underwater about 5 feet. And you know, if you keep an eye on your depth finder and just kind of look for boats like these, you'll find where they're at. And they're just great fishing spots almost any time of year. Now today, I don't know, because it's so calm out here. One of the rare days in southwest Oklahoma where you've got some calm weather. It'd be a great crappie and bass fishing day, but when we like to fish these points when there's some wind blowing across them. And obviously the fish like them better that time too. And predators like saugeye and hybrids and bass, they're just more competitive when there's waves and wind stirring up the environment. They're more apt or able to catch shad. So, ideally we'd have some wind, but we'll try it anyway.
What's he feel like? Want that net? Another catfish. There's Saugeye today. I think, John, weren't you dragging bottom right there across that point? Saugeye are great easy fish. Can't wait to get him. I'm gonna get those to the cleaning station. Live well going?
Yeah, walleyes were stocked in Fort Cobb and several other lakes in southwest Oklahoma back in the 60s and 70s. And for a while they did okay, and there was some good fishing for them. It was a unique fish. And through the 80s, the populations generally declined, and we tried to stock walleye fry first for a while. No success, no improvement. Then walleye fingerling is a little bigger, and really didn't see any improvement. And when the idea of the saugeye came along, first tried at Thunderbird, we started trying them down here instead of walleye. And our catch rates and our samples and the fishing for them just went up tremendously. We doubled or tripled our populations when we started using saugeye instead of walleye. And I think, they're a hybrid first of all, but they're just more of a hardy fish. You put them in a bucket or a live well, they last longer. So I think they're just more suited to Oklahoma weather, especially our heat in the summertime. And just a better all-around fish as far as their ability to fight and survive. There's a point that comes out here and it makes an L in this case, and I'm just looking for it on a depth finder and dragging a lure across it. Basically, it's as simple as that. People will troll it some, but you just keep going back and forth across it with a curly tail grub on a jig. You'll catch fish on good days. Same head shaker, small in size?
Yeah, I think he's a little guy.
Same size? Yep.
A little guy. Oh, that one's probably just a 12, maybe 13 incher. They've got to be 14 here to keep them. That'll be good for next year, all these fish this size that we've been catching. Yeah, he's just 13 inches, so he's protected here.
Well, I've got a color or two that I really like on these grubs, and you know, I'll fish these things for almost everything, all kinds of fish, 90% of the time, and it's kind of my ultimate scout lure. Once I start catching fish, sometimes I'll switch up, but you know, that bait right there will catch almost everything, and it's kind of my go-to bait when nothing else will work. A 3-inch curly tail grub on a, what is that, guys, an 1/8 ounce or so? If you stick your rod in a rod holder, you're not really fishing for saugeye, because they're like trout. They'll just tap at it, tip at it, kind of like crappie. And you really got to keep not only your hand on your rod, but I keep my line in my finger. I want to feel everything. I want to feel every tap on the bottom and try to distinguish between the bottom and the fish. And that's really the key to it, is figuring out, you know, when you're getting hit by the bottom, you might say, and when you're getting hit by a fish. You got one? Is it a good one?
There you go.
Yeah.
Channel cat.
Nice.
Speaking of channel cats.
Got our one channel cat for the day. There was a big gar right there too. Another.
Larry was saying about them being soft biters. Probably saugeye bit the tail off that night crawler.
And that's what they'll do a lot too, is they'll test it. Just like he did to me right there. You'll watch the end, you'll feel it, and you'll watch the end of your rod, and they'll test it. They'll test the end of it. They'll bite the end off of a minnow or a worm and never get to your hook. And in that case, I'll probably pull up my 3-inch grub and it'll be 2 inches now. The technique's not that difficult, but I think where most people make their mistake is they don't fish slow enough, and so the lure always stays up in the water and is never riding the bottom like it needs to. It needs to be in contact with the bottom all the time, most of the time, to catch a saugeye. Here in Fort Cobb, at least, the fish you're seeing, those 13 inchers, they're roughly a year old, right at a year old. And those same fish next year will be around 16 inches or so, and legal. They'll be over 14 inches long at least. And the next year, by 3 years here, they'll be 20 inches long, 3 pounds or so. Nice saugeye. And then, you know, all the way up to 10 pounds in this lake, state record. So the growth is pretty good here because, you know, if you look at the watercolor, it's a really fertile lake. They spend the first year eating silver sides, ghost minnows about that long, and there's plenty of them. And then lots of shad when they want to get on them. After they get about 14 inches long, they start eating shad. Lots of food in this lake, and so growth is not really an issue here. Another small saugeye. But anyway, I was going to say that, you know, the nice thing about from here on out, water temperature 70 plus. You don't even need any waders. You can just, you know, get out here in your shorts. Eesh. They have some pretty sharp little points right there. You got to watch for. That will get you. Of course, their teeth too, but that gill plate right there is pretty sharp. Got a point to it. Pretty little fish, almost like a trout, and that's the way they bite, especially today. They're biting real light. Toss him back right over here. Wasn't a bad day.
No, it's pretty good. Caught a few fish.
Little ones, a bunch of them, but a couple of keepers. Enough to clean.
Yeah. A little wind would have helped some more.
Wind would have been good. Some clouds would have helped.
Yeah.
These clouds are here, but they're not moving. A little too calm for saugeye fishing today, but maybe we can turn our attention now to bass and crappie the rest of the summer.
Got some brush piles too.
We need to give the saugeyes a break anyway.
Yeah. Been wearing them out.
Roughed them up too much
At least Larry has
this spring. Ryan, get me off this lake. I'm hot. Ready to go in.
Okay. You about dunked me here.
One of the serious problems that Oklahoma faces is aquatic nuisance species. One of the species that we have problems with in several of our lakes now is called hydrilla. It's an exotic plant that was brought into the aquarium trade back in the 1800s. It spread across the southeastern United States and finally came to Oklahoma in about 1995 at Arbuckle Lake. Some of our lakes in Oklahoma have aquatic vegetation on their own. There's not many that do, but some do. Here at Lake Murray, one of the most common plants is this native pondweed. A lot of people see this in farm ponds, and it's pretty easy to distinguish. It's got broad leaves and stems, grows anywhere from 6 feet down up to 2 and 3 feet of water. Pretty easy to identify. It's a really good plant, generally doesn't become invasive or a nuisance. Good cover for fish, great habitat. It's one we like to see in a lot of our lakes. The other one that we have a lot of in Oklahoma is coontail. Coontail is a real bushy plant, has the little leaves on the end of the stems look like a raccoon's tail. That's where it gets its name. Gets real thick in some places, but again, it's a native plant. It generally doesn't become a nuisance in our bigger lakes, and it does provide a lot of good habitat for not just fish, but other critters that fish feed on, live in this stuff. Hydrilla, on the other hand, tends to be very invasive, and when plants are invasive in nature, they grow extremely fast, and they grow in a lot of places that these other native plants won't grow. Most of the invasions of hydrilla and other nuisance plants start around boat ramps. So we want to make sure that anglers and boaters are very conscientious about cleaning this stuff off of your trailers. If you back into a lake that has these in them, make sure you clean your trailer off, the equipment, your boater. Make sure you don't transplant any of these nuisance plants to other bodies of water. Because like I said, all it takes to start a whole new colony of hydrilla in another lake is a little tiny fragment like that, and you can cause some real problems for our fisheries and the water quality in some of our other lakes.
Well, from the collection of broodstock to the artificial production in a hatchery to releasing them in a lake and eventually ending up in your live well, the story of the saugeye is as interesting as they come. Get out and do a little of your own recreational sampling this year. For all of us at your wildlife department, I'm Todd Craighead. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you somewhere new next time on Outdoor Oklahoma.